Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Jasmine Ortiz Show. I'm very excited to introduce my guest this week. We have a multi industry professional here, both in music tech, as a music entertainment lawyer, and as a composer and musician. Today, we have Shoshana Zisk. I'm very excited to introduce you, Shoshana, to my audience and really talk more about how you went from composer, musician into law, and then now running a multi city, cross country music technology conference. So, first, welcome to the show. And if you could give a little brief introduction of yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Shoshana Zisk, and like you said, I wear a lot of hats. So I'm a native of Miami. I'm a product of the Miami school system. I graduated from the New World School of the Arts, and I was part of the first class that went to New World School of the Arts, and I'm still on the board of the Alumni Association. From there, I went to and got my degree in classical piano. While I was at the music school, I was hired to play piano for a theater production they were doing at the law school called Equity Playhouse. And I did this every year of being an undergrad and just became really close friends with all the attorneys there and ended up taking the LSAT, got a great score, and decided to go to law school. What intrigued me about it is the idea of being a voice for artists who sometimes don't have their voice. And I could really understand from the artist perspective, from the creator's perspective as a creator myself, as a musician myself, and to be a voice for those artists. And I'm kind of blessed that I've been able to do that now for my whole career.
That's incredible and super impressive. I think something you said is super poignant to any independent artists listening to the show, especially in the terms of protection. A lot of artists don't know how to protect themselves because they don't know what the terms and conditions mean. They don't know how to read music business agreements. They don't know the importance of safeguarding their metadata. Any elements like that, what would you say from your experience is one of the key factors that most artists miss out on or overlook in trying to protect themselves?
Well, I would say at the very beginning, for baby artists, getting your copyrights registered, because I know a lot of artists will say, "Well, I want to sign up for the place that's going to pay me," and that becomes like their priority. Like, let me get my distribution, and they sign up with a distributor. But if you don't have your copyrights actually registered and in place with the Library of Congress, then if somebody steals your work, you don't have standing to sue in federal court because you never registered. And that's on the act that you have to be registered and then also to get those statutory damages in the event. So really it's like getting a birth certificate for your baby. That would be definitely my tip that some artists omit. For people who are already past the beginning stages that are at higher levels, I would say always to get independent counsel before you sign any kind of agreement that gets presented to you. Don't be in a rush and just take your time and find somebody that you can trust to guide you in your business.
Absolutely excellent advice. I think the independent counsel is such a key factor there too, because a lot of times artists are put under the gun, like sign now or we're walking away type of situations. I
Mm-hmm.
remember hearing a story about Rihanna jokingly saying that I think it was Jay-Z actually. He kind of said, "Oh, you're not leaving this room until you sign a deal with us," kind of thing. And she was in there 12 plus hours negotiating and discussing the deal and who knows what clauses were in there that were not beneficial to her and how she navigated that first stage of her career because no one was really out there advocating on her behalf. It was just
Yes,
her in the room with those music executives and they were calling the shots.
yeah, that must have been very uncomfortable for her, but simultaneously very exciting for her, to have that happening. And so sometimes when you're so excited, you can kind of let go of reason. But really, the best thing is almost like, okay, can we just stop and like get somebody in here? Because these contracts are not written in plain English and it's really nuanced. So even if you think you're reading something and that it makes sense to you, there's also then, well, this has gone to court before and now it's being interpreted because that's what the judicial system does. They interpret the contracts. And so there may be a completely different meaning than what you think it means.
Absolutely. So back to your actual start out as a composer and a pianist, what are your favorite type of compositions to create or play?
I love like that post neoclassical, I would say like Ludovico Einaudi, that if I pronounce that correctly, but it feels like classical, but it isn't classical, but it's based on classical, and it's really effective for film scoring and for it's just that's just my particular favorite kind of thing to compose. But of course, orchestral works, you have all the different timbres that you can put together. Yeah, definitely. I'm like more of a classical musician than a like a EDM producer.
I think that's fantastic though, and it's so important to keep film scoring alive. I know sync licensing is such a large and ever expanding industry, but I really value the nuance and the artistry that goes into a fully scored film. I think
Yes.
there's something different about it, and a lot of times music directors, they don't have the budget to fully produce a complete film score, so they'll opt for sync licensing. But I think it's really interesting. So I love that. Do you have a favorite
Especially
film that you've heard the score of?
so many, and what's so exciting about it now is that they have that spatial audio, and
Yeah.
AI is going in to help that, and they have the Dolby Atmos system. And in fact, at the Miami Music Tech Summit, the conference that I'm producing on the 25th, we're going to have a few people that are experts in that area who, in the movie theater, the Silver Spot Cinema, there's that whole surround sound, and they're going to be demonstrating how they're working with that and all the new developments in how audio can be experienced in an immersive environment.
Yeah, that's an incredible development in technology.
My favorite score was American Beauty.
That's amazing. I have to check that one out. I actually have a friend who's working at Lucasfilm Ranch. He's been on the show before, and he
Mm-hmm.
was telling me about their developments with Dolby Atmos and just how that's really transforming the film industry. Something we were talking about is we wish that in Miami and other places, clubs could implement that on their live DJ sets and things like of that nature, because having all those people in the room, being able to trigger different elements in different parts of the room, they kind of already have the infrastructure for this, but it would be a lot to roll it out and actually implement it. But it's a great
Yes.
technology.
Especially at a festival like Ultra, that's
Yeah,
coming out. That would really be great to have that experience of the immersive audio, but from the audience and with all those people with you. So I think there's a lot more that's coming up in the future that's going to be really exciting for audiophiles and people that love to experience music.
absolutely. And you just mentioned the development of AI and its implementation in music technology. As someone versed in copyright law like yourself, what are your thoughts or opinions on all of this controversy surrounding what models the AI is being trained on and any copyright infringement that might be involved in that?
Yes. So there is a movement right now of ethical AI, because there's the ethical AI and then the unethical AI, which is maybe taking people's music, not having permission, training your AI on it. And, there are businesses that are doing this as a business model, but then there are other AI companies who are really dedicated to doing it ethically and making sure. And I think there's actually a bunch of companies that signed in to this, like signatories on this statement, and their mission being ethical. One I would say is Splice. I don't know if you're familiar with Splice, but
Yeah,
they
I
came
love Splice.
around. Okay, yeah. So they came around in 2013, and their whole goal was to organize stems and getting all the stems together for the producers. So everything that they have in their stem library, they have a contract. Signed with the people who created those stems so that they could be fairly compensated. And now they're training their AI on those licensed stems so that you, as a subscriber, to Splice can be confident that you're not going to come back and find yourself being sued unknowingly. And I think that's what is really important for the creators, is to have these libraries of music, that and to use that as a way to inspire you to create. I think that's the same way people use chat gpt if they want to write a letter, and they can go in and it inspires something, but most of the time they're going to edit it because it needs to be in their own voice. So it's the same thing with the music, is that you could have it to inspire, but there's got to be some human element in order for it to be even copyrightable. The Copyright Office has come out, I think, just in the last month with its new opinion letter, or however they make their new promulgations. And it's basically saying that just writing a prompt to AI isn't enough to be an author of music, but there actually has to be some human creation of the music. So,
Yeah.
sort of like that's how it's shaking out. And I feel that's the right way as well.
Absolutely. I'm actually really happy to hear that. I was not aware of that development. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how they're going to enforce that. For example, if someone went into Suno AI, typed in a prompt, got a fully developed song, re-recorded it in their own voice, I mean, couldn't they just claim that they wrote it start to finish? I mean, I feel like that's still a little bit of a gray area, not being able to trace the origin.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact way, that they're going to be able to determine, but I do know that, like, with a sample, the courts have decided when sampling was in it, the biggest thing that people were really confused about is that even a needle drop of somebody else's music, and that's taking the record, dropping it on for a second and taking it off, is a sample that needs to be compensated for copyright. So there was no minimum or maximum amount, so we'll just have to see, how it develops. But I know the people that are really doing it in such an obviously obnoxiously spammy way, where they're just like creating 1,000 songs and then flooding DistroKid and like hoping that that's being basically shut down from the level of Spotify. Like they're like going in and saying these are artificial streams. You paid somebody to have a cell phone farm in China to like click this song a million, like we can see that this is abusive and we're not paying out on it. And so maybe those types of policies that are outside of the copyright law, not in the court system, but the distributors themselves, and
Can put their foot down,
yeah, they
essentially.
can put their foot down and just say, you know what, we don't want this to happen, because it really takes away from the space for creators that need to be there with their own creative works, and they spend a lot of time to do that, and then somebody else is just like hitting buttons and flooding the whole system. It's like it's not really moving creativity forward.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I forget the exact number, but recently I heard a statistic that was kind of jarring but understandable that every week over hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of songs are uploaded to streaming platforms, and maybe less than 1-2% of them are really getting considerable plays. The market is being incredibly oversaturated. And as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier, the playing field has been leveled, but I almost feel like a new barrier to entry has been introduced. Whereas before, the gatekeepers were more or less qualified individuals in the music industry. They were record executives, A&Rs, music producers, entertainment lawyers. They had stake in the game, they had years of experience, they earned their place there. I feel now the gatekeepers are both the consumer but also advertising. Because without those advertising dollars to legally, without bots, pay for visibility essentially on social media platforms, YouTube, Google Ads, Spotify, all of those channels, it can be incredibly difficult for an artist to organically push through the noise, so to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
outside of platforms like TikTok or social media and developing an organic following there, I kind of feel like the new gatekeeper barrier to entry is really just advertising dollars.
Yeah, and I would agree with that, and also just that there is so much going out. So it's no longer a time that you could just say, "Hey, I've been uploaded to a distributor and therefore it's just going to happen." That you as an artist need to do what artists have always done, which is connect directly with your fans and form a relationship with your fans. Like it used to be, if you had 1,000 followers on whichever social media platform, that if you posted something that your 1,000 followers would see it. But now, the advertisers, they're paying, and so they need to be seen, and there's only so much browsing that people can do. So they'll say a non-paid post will go to 15 of your fans out of the 1,000, and then do you want to pay to boost it, and so then it just becomes like you can't really even connect directly with your fans even if they're following you.
Yeah.
That's why I would say these systems they have, like Bandcamp, Patreon, where you can be directly connected with your fans. If you put something up on Patreon, everybody who's subscribing is going to see it, and continuing to develop that relationship. But I do know that I hear some artists complaining, like, do we have to be influencers? Do we have to, it's just music. Like, why should I be taking photos and videos? And, but it really, it isn't just like creating something and then putting it out there, but it's developing relationships with your fans, not deeply intimate, but just where you know how to reach them, they know how to reach you, and that you're connected in a way, and it's compelling that they want to be in your world.
Absolutely. I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because, of course, 15, 20 years ago, it was incredibly difficult to even be seen by a record label, to get that kind of visibility, even to distribute your own music, because before DSPs and digital distributors, you literally had to go and have someone press your CD or burn it
Mm-hmm.
at home, physically distribute copies. I don't think people are really recognizing the stride forward in accessibility that we're having
Yes.
simultaneously with the negative aspect of social media. I myself don't really enjoy social media. I'll come out and say it. I think it is a necessary evil. I also know that it is one of the most pivotal business tools that we have in our arsenal, and it's
Yes.
ultimately irresponsible to ignore that it exists.
Yes, no, absolutely. People have to be on Instagram these days. The places change. And so that's the other thing. Like if you were really big on Facebook and now most people are using Instagram, it's like if one of these services shut down, like that day that TikTok shut down, and some people are like, I have 50,000 people on TikTok, and then suddenly they're out of business, then you don't have any of your fans anymore. Like they don't know. You don't know how to reach them. And so there's also that, what is it that I own versus where am I? Because you are in a way advertising and you are the product. If something is free, then you're the product, and so they're just really trying to, their goal isn't really to make anybody famous. It's like the algorithm, everything now, it's the algorithm age.
Absolutely. I think we're fastly approaching a rent and subscribe only society. Even
Mm-hmm.
some car manufacturers are floating the idea of introducing subscription based services in their vehicles. I mean, we already have Sirius XM radio subscription based in cars, but that's
Mm-hmm.
optional. Now, car manufacturers, not third party systems, are trying to start introducing either Bluetooth that's subscription based or
Mm-hmm.
GPS that's subscription based. Different functionalities that normally would just come in your car are now going to be something that you pay for monthly as well. So I think it's a cultural shift, and there's
Mm-hmm.
been a lot of pushback against this because with every technological progression, there's going to be someone who wants to abuse it, just
Yes.
like with AI. So it's fascinating to me. And I do hope that we move into some sort of comfortable middle ground.
Yes. And you know what? These are all the types of discussions that we have at the Miami Music Tech Summit, getting all of the CEOs of these companies together, talk about what's working, what's not working, the pain points, the dreams that people have. When I first started doing the SF Music Tech Summit in 2008, the big talk was about creating a celestial jukebox, like one place where all the songs could be. And of course, now that totally exists. It's like we just take it for granted that any song that you want to hear, for the most part, you can go online and you can find it on a service where that artist is being compensated for you listening. Like that
Mm-hmm.
totally has been solved, but it became solved because so many people were getting together at conferences, talking about it, finding ways for it to happen, and then moving the whole industry forward. And the one constant that never changes is the human desire to hear music. There's always fans. Like that always is going to be there, even during a time when there was piracy and CDs weren't being bought and it looks so gloomy. But the demand, every single day, people need music.
I think the impact that music and the arts have on humanity, on our daily lives, is so vast, but also so undervalued. And that's
Yes.
something that I've talked about in previous episodes about the compensation system with streaming. So I know that you've probably dealt with different cases of this with people you've represented, but how do you feel about the percentage rate or penny rate that artists are making per stream? And do you think that this should be based upon artist popularity or a flat rate? Because I know a lot of different companies and even lawmakers are going back and forth on what's fair.
Yes. Well, I definitely feel like everybody is represented, at least inside this discussion. And they've gone to court, they've gone to Congress, and there's always going to be the person who's collecting the money, the copyright aggregators or the content aggregators who are going to be fighting to pay less. And then there's going to be the artists that are fighting to get more. But it is kind of disappointing to see, like, I had 500 million streams and then here's my, my
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar, that type of feeling. And I feel like because of that artists are finding a lot of other ways,
To
for
monetize.
compensation and to monetize. And there's so many new ways and opportunities to make money, like you were saying before, like sync licensing. That's a whole other thing outside, and of course live music and performing and getting your royalties for when people cover your music on YouTube, like making sure that you're signed up with Content ID and Sound Exchange. Like there's really, this is why it's important to talk to an attorney also to make sure that you're
Absolutely.
not leaving any money on the table somewhere.
Yeah. And I think that's something more artists need to become aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So, back to your music tech conference, which is coming up for the first time in Miami in about a
Yes.
week and a half. I'm so excited for this event. I want to talk about back in 2008 or probably 2006, 2007. How did you come up with this idea and what were some of your first steps to make this become a reality? Because a lot of moving parts are involved.
Yes. Well, actually, the idea for doing the music tech conference, the first one that we did in 2008, that came from my business partner being on the board of the Future of Music Coalition. And the Future of Music Coalition was really active around 2000, 2001, 2002. And they were representing all of the artists who were really getting shafted by a change in the law that had happened at that time. It was like some satellite bill or something, and they actually changed the entire right structure to be a work made for hire for sound recordings, which would have screwed a lot of artists out of their termination. So the Future of Music Coalition got together and pitched to Congress, like did all the political activism that they could do to get it reversed. And it was very successful. And my partner was in San Francisco. It was the .com boom was just happening. And he was the technologies director for the Future of Music Coalition. And so we just decided, and they were doing conferences every year. We decided to do a West Coast and have it only be about tech, and that's
Mm.
it. And it was really popular and very successful and really needed for what was happening in San Francisco at the time. A lot of the first people that came, like for example, we had Tim Westergren from the Music Genome Project. He was creating a DNA for music, like 150 different attributes to make a DNA that would explain this song. And then for music discovery, he would get other songs that maybe weren't labeled in the same genre, but they had the same exact attributes. And so then you could put songs together by DNA and create a radio station. And he ended up turning this into Pandora. And then by then they were a sponsor, and we let Tim come and speak. And then by the time our fourth conference came around, Pandora was a publicly traded company. Like it had gotten so big because
Wow.
the idea was so good. And I had the same experience with another musician, Jack Conte from Pamplemousse. And he came to our first show, and he came a few times after, just talking about the video songs that he was doing on YouTube and how he became a YouTube star. And we have a lot of startup culture. That's what is a like important aspect of our event, is getting venture capitalists out, people that have the money that can fund a startup and get them off the ground. So just about everybody was like, I have a startup, I have an idea. And we had a startup competition, and we would and we're still doing that. In fact, we're going to have startup competition winners at the Miami Music Tech, and today's the last day to enter. So if probably by the time this posts, but the winners will be presented at the show. And so at the last conference that Jacques Canty came to speak, he did a demo at the elevator pitch of his new company, Patreon. It was just an idea because he felt like, maybe not having YouTube in the middle, people could just, he just kind of pitched it. And within 3 months, he got funding, and now it's like $1 billion company. And
Yeah.
so that's where it comes from, that sometimes it's not like waiting for Warner or Universal to come up with the next project, but really the artists themselves thinking
Hmm.
about what they need and what problem they want to solve, coming up with an idea, saying this is a startup, getting funding from a venture capitalist, and then taking that idea to the market or going through an accelerator. So that's what's different about my music tech conference, is that I'm not just like, oh, look at this, or let's talk about your idea, but like, let's get your idea off the ground. At our 2015 show, we had Elmo Lavano, who was a drummer for Christina Perri, and he came out and he had an idea for a social network like Facebook, but only for musicians, and not just like, amateur musicians, but professional musicians. And he created this social network. It is called Jam Card. And, we thought it was such a great idea that we actually started our own fund. It was called the SF Music Tech Fund. And we went to all the VCs that we know and we asked them to put into the fund. And then that company actually funded Jamcard. And now Jamcard is out. They're partnering with the Grammys. It's like very active. They do these jams everywhere, like getting all their artists together to meet and connect. And, seeing this get born and get off the ground because they came. I mean, there's a good quote I like to hear. It's 80% of success is just showing up, and
Mm.
showing up to where everybody is, where the money is. Miami now, I think I saw in the paper that the mayor is referring to it as the capital of capital, which is true. And
It
it's
makes
also
sense.
the gateway to Latin America. I think that Miami is really the perfect environment now for this type of event and having it grow. There's a lot of talent in Miami, and Miami loves music. We have so many clubs. It's really like there's a lot of opportunities to get on stage in Miami.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you what your inspiration to bring it back to your hometown was, because I know you were in San Francisco, living, hosting the conference more than 10 years. Did you just feel that the time was right to bring this kind of environment here?
I have always dreamed of doing a conference in Miami. Every year when I was doing it in San Francisco, in the back of my head, I wish I was in Miami doing this, because I'm from Miami and I know how great it is. We have a lot of great music schools, talent, tech initiatives. So after we did the conference in California, we did a conference in Hawaii, which was awesome. It was a destination conference. And then we did a conference in New Orleans. And then I moved back to Miami to be closer to my family. My whole extended family lives here, and ended up staying for the pandemic. And during this time, the Winter Music Conference stopped happening. And I was like a really big fan of the Winter Music Conference in Ultra. And so without it happening, it didn't happen last year. And I was like this close to producing an event, but I didn't. And then no conference happened. And so for this year, I decided, okay, this is it. I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm going to put the conference on. And then now the Winter Music Conference is happening. So we're the day before the Winter Music Conference. We're on the first day of Miami Music Week. So there's really a lot happening in Miami during Miami Music Week. And our event is the Music Tech event. It's more of like an elite event for the leaders and the CEOs and the investors to get together and meet with startups.
I love the concept. I love the list of speakers and the vast array of different backgrounds that they all come from. I was incredibly impressed when I looked through the website and then looked on your Instagram and saw the history. It's really amazing. It's amazing also taking it back across the country. So, did you
Mm-hmm.
kind of reach back to contacts that you had made through previous years of hosting the conference, or did you start from Miami-based contacts primarily?
Well, I actually started with my national contacts. So I wasn't necessarily looking for the best people in Miami, but really the best people in the nation. And so a lot of people are, in fact, flying in town to attend this event. And I have people coming internationally also attending the Miami Music Tech Summit and coming to speak. And we do have a lot of Miami people too, just because I really want to highlight the local culture and the gems that I have found in Miami. So you'll also see a good mix of locals as well.
That's incredible. I can't wait. I know it's going to be a phenomenal event. So, in producing something of this scale, what is one element of producing an event like this that you feel gets overlooked by most people? Something that is sort of a hidden task behind the scenes?
That most people don't realize. Well, I would say just how much work it really is. Like you said, I really had to go through all of my contacts, see who's available, get them to coordinate. Also I'm being an attorney in the celebrity world. I'm part of the management team for George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. They headlined 3 Points this year, if you went. So I was there. It was awesome. I love Factory Town and Face and all of the venues here. But I had to really go through with my relationship with him and all of his contacts. And it really takes thousands of people invited in order to narrow it down and get to where we are with our current lineup, which I'm very impressed with the people who accepted, and I'm really looking forward to hearing them as well.
Me as well. What are some trial and error lessons that you learned through your first few years of hosting and producing this conference?
Well, don't wait too long to order your signs. I don't know. I mean,
That's such a
obviously,
simple one, but I mean, it can be
yes.
forgotten.
Yeah, there's a lot of production elements. I think at the first I was really doing everything on my own, staying up all night burning the midnight oil, and now I've diversified. I have a team. I've hired some people locally that are great, and I'm not really trying to do everything by myself anymore. And I think that was definitely a big lesson. And I think that's also a big lesson for startups and artists, because artists can really just be like, it's me, I'm by myself, I'm isolated. And there's a term that we used to say that the Beatles, because they were just those four people, that they really needed a fifth Beatle that was just going to answer emails and send letters and look at the details and the logistics. And in a way, as an artist, if you're doing that all yourself, like you are the band and you're that fifth Beatle, and that if you're good enough and you believe in your music and you're able to start getting fans, I would suggest right away try to diversify and get some help. There's a lot of people who want to be involved, but they want to be behind the scenes and supporters. And it's really good to find who those supporters are. Maybe it could be a super fan, and really try to get a lot of people together to form a mastermind and not just be the only mind, be to have it be like an ecosystem in a way around your music. That would be a lesson that I've learned. Yes.
Absolutely. In any endeavor, I think two minds can be better than one, especially with music. It's such a collaborative effort a lot of the
Yes.
time. So many moving parts, so many different roles to take on. I definitely believe in asking for help when it's needed. In that vein, what are some of your favorite professional roles that you've taken on throughout your entire career, and how do you feel that one has sort of connected to the other?
Okay. Well, the favorite thing that I have done out of my entire career was I was the musical director for a regional production of the musical Rent. And so which is like a rock band, is so it's not like an orchestra, but it's like a rock band. And I got some people from Berklee College of Music to be in the band with me, and I was the musical director. And we had to do this show. It was Friday, Saturday, and then a Sunday matinee. And that went on for a year and a half. It was in San
Wow.
Francisco, and we also did it in Los Angeles and in Hollywood at the Hudson Theater. And I did this. I really think that this has informed me, that, and also doing that production at the law school, the Equity Playhouse that they hired me when I was an undergrad. Like having to be on stage and do a show so many times a week for such a long period of time really, I think, helped me to understand what it's like to be on stage and like delivering something that can be life changing for an audience. Sometimes you can going and seeing a movie or seeing a production or a really well run conference can change your whole timeline. The trajectory of your life can change just by the ideas and the inspiration. And so a lot of times I would see this happen just through people experiencing the musical Rent. And I definitely see this happening through people that come to conferences where it's just like they're in a completely new direction after having the experience. And that's really what moves me to want to keep doing these.
Wow, I've definitely felt that way after seeing some live concerts, live musical theater. It's
Hmm.
I think the shared human experience of what you're witnessing, as well as the inspiration, if it's something that you do in your career, of wow, this is the level at which this person is doing it in their career, that's really inspiring, and it's something that you want to aspire to do.
Yes.
So I guess that's you sort of answered this already, but what keeps you motivated to continue innovating, and have you ever faced burnout?
Yes, I did go through a burnout period, and luckily that exactly coincided with the pandemic. So I actually,
Perfect.
yeah, I was like, I've had enough. And then South by Southwest was canceled, and then the Winter Music Conference was canceled, and we all sort of had to go inward for a period of time. And during that period of time, been at home raising my daughter. My other daughter was going away to college, and I took time to just be a mother and not have to be on stage or get productions together. We did a virtual conference. So that was fun, but I would say that that burnout was cured by the pandemic. It's almost like people don't like it was a shared experience that we all had, and it's not really talked about that much anymore, but it really was, I think, pivotal for me because I would have just probably at that point quit, because I was just so exhausted, but I am so amped now and ready to bring this to Miami. And I'm just so glad that I'm back in it now and that I'm no longer burnt out at all. I love what I'm doing.
I actually feel I experienced something similar around a similar time frame. Maybe even a year or two displaced, because I my college experience was interrupted right in the middle, and then I had to go home for 8 months, and then I sort of moved to LA on and off for a year, and then I finally went back to school in person to finish off the last year and a half. So then following all of that back and forth and uncertainty, I felt a huge period of burnout, which I think can be natural following graduating as well if things are sort of uncertain. But I think right now, I think 2025 is off to a great start. I'm super motivated and excited, and I am really happy I got to speak with you.
Thank you. I'm glad I got to speak with you too. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you on March 25th at the Miami Music Tech Summit, downtown Miami. I'll give my URL if you want to check out our speaker lineup. That's at miamimusictech.com.
Absolutely. And is there anywhere you would like people to connect with you via social media?
Yeah, they can follow us on Instagram. We're everywhere at Miami Music Tech. That's our username on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. So I'm checking it every day, and I'm definitely open for any questions or comments.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time,
You're welcome.
Shoshana. I am really looking forward to March 25th, downtown Miami, Miami Music Tech Summit. Be there, don't miss it.